Coming up on Unpacked.
I really do believe that procreation is God's expression of love.
So it was time for us to have a family of our own.
Got into the water, 5 pushes, baby was out. She started hyperventilating and then she became still. And when I put my ear to her chest, her heartbeat had stopped.
One of the most difficult things that a parent can go through is losing a child shortly after their birth. Both of our guests are here to share their stories. Let's unpack. In 2018, Fihliwe Mthethwa was overjoyed after receiving the news of her pregnancy. She and her then boyfriend were excited to start a family. However, their joy was short-lived a few days after she gave birth. Actress Monyane's second pregnancy proved to be more challenging than her first one. The home birth of her daughter was successful. However, it was met with challenges on the day and the days to follow. This is part 1 of their stories. Let's unpack. Fihliwe, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And joining us via video con, we have Mona. Mona, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Mona, let me start with you. You were in a relationship with your partner at the time when you first fell pregnant with your first child. What was that like?
As someone who's always wanted to be a mother, it was amazing, I really do believe that procreation is God's expression of love to us as human beings. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Was it a surprise or it was something you were expecting?
No, intentional. Intentional. My first child was intentional. I met her father and I knew that this was the person I want to have children with. He agreed and we went in.
And talk us through what that pregnancy was like, because obviously no pregnancy is the same. Not all symptoms will be experienced by all women.
So with my first child, it was it's your first experience getting pregnant, so you're just exploring, you figuring yourself out, you figuring out the changes in your body. So I was extremely lazy with that child. I was very I was like a little egg. Everybody must just treat me like the goddess I am becoming because I am with child. You know what I mean? So it was a very explorative time for me and just discovering all the different changes that my body was going through.
And in terms of the birth, what birthing plan did you opt for and how did that go?
I was very adamant that I wanted a home birth. I'm a homeopathic person. I don't even take grandpa or panado or anything like that. I'm not into going to doctors and hospitals and things like that. So I was very sure that I wanted a home birth. I went to Genesis, which is an amazing space in Johannesburg that has midwives who work with you. And I found Mthethwa, who she's just an angel, phenomenal woman, who then came to my home and helped me give birth in my home. So it was 17 hours of torture.
That's a lot.
I gave birth. It was 17 hours. I had contractions every minute because you have to pay attention, right? Every single minute. It was the worst, really. It was horrifying. You do not forget. They lie to you, people. No, at the end of it all, my baby was there and I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't change it for the world.
So it was not long after that you actually found out you were pregnant again.
Yeah. So Ahadi was 7 months old when I found out I was pregnant again. And oh my goodness. No, I to be completely honest, I was not ready. I was like, oh my gosh, well, how am I going to handle another baby? I just had one now. I'm bonding. I don't feel like I have the capacity to love another child even, because when you meet your new child and you fall in love with them, because I fell in love with Ahadi on day 3. The first few days I was just like grateful that I was still alive, But once I had that connection with my daughter and I found out, now here's another child coming, I really felt so overwhelmed. I felt so concerned as to how emotionally I was going to be able to handle it. And at the time, I was still prioritizing trying to get back into my career, trying to lose the baby weight and go right back to work. And then it felt like, oh no, here is this, obstacle in my way now.
And I think to paint a picture, obviously, for the viewers that don't know, you are an actress and a body and your physicality forms a big part of your profession.
Huge part. But, what then happened is when I announced the pregnancy, because you make peace with those anxieties, I got backlash from people who were criticizing how soon I had fallen pregnant after my first child.
Wow.
And the one thing about me is I do not tolerate disrespect. I feel like my career, yes, it does put me in the public eye. It does give me a certain popularity, but I'm absolutely still a human being. And do you know what I mean? So I really responded. So when people said that, I really asked them, I was like, but is this not my vagina? Are you going to help me birth this child? Are you going to be paying for anything here? No, you're not. So please respect me. And I think what was disappointing for me as well was you get to a point when you start branding, and with social media and the way that it is, where you want to connect with your audience, where you want to be able to really have something where they see the person outside of the work that you portray. And I was sharing something so beautiful, and people want to come with their negativity. So that did sort of give me a little bit more of a spotlight, because people were quite surprised that this Dr. Ntabele could be so, and that's the thing I want you to communicate. We are human beings beyond our craft.
But fortunately, there were many people, though, who were congratulating you and saw the blessing in what was happening.
Absolutely. And that has become my little. It feels like a nation of people that I've just found, a sisterhood. Melanin queens who have just really inspired me as well, leading up to this journey. But they were very supportive throughout the whole process.
Now I'm going to come back to you, and we'll chat a bit more about what that pregnancy was like. Fihliwe, you met your partner at the time. What was that relationship like in the build-up to you finding out you're pregnant?
My relationship with my partner, he was like a father to me. Because now I grew up without a father. So he played that role of being a father. So it was deep, I can say. So that is why we had decided that we should have a family of our own.
And I understand what you're saying, because some people might not understand when you say it was like a father, as in that male figure in your life, being a protector, provider, creating a safe space for you. And at the time, your mother had passed away. Yes. And where was your father in your life at the time?
I had met my father when I was 11 years of age, and then he disappeared. And the only communication I had with him was via my mother. So when my mother passed on, I had to now have a relationship with my father. But because he was always absent in my life.
Yeah. It wasn't really possible.
Yes.
So now you and your partner get together. And what happened when you found out you were pregnant?
I remember I was extremely delighted, because now we had a mutual agreement that we would have a baby, and because now we have been together for 12 years, 10 years at a time. So it was time for us to have a family of our own. because now I had lost a sister and now I had no one, basically. So a family was an option for me. It was something that I've always wanted.
So then, how excited were you when you discovered that you're pregnant?
Remember, I couldn't believe it because now it was my first pregnancy. So I was just over the moon. And also my partner was so excited.
And did he have children of his own?
No, we never. So it was our first.
Together, yes. So now, how did that pregnancy go?
I remember during my pregnancy, it was not an easy one, I could say. I was sick most of the time. I was extremely exhausted most of the time because now I was working in retail, so I didn't have much time to rest. So it was not an easy pregnancy. It was really difficult for me because now I was living on my own at that time. So I had nobody to help me out, nobody to tell me what to do when I'm sick or things like that. So I had to go through my pregnancy all by myself.
Mona, how did you find your second pregnancy?
Firstly, the support, I guess the more children you have, maybe this is my experience, lessens a little bit. There's sort of this whole, you've been there, done that, you've got the T-shirt, so you know what to do. So firstly, that was a bit disappointing for me. I just felt like my support system could have been as consistent as they were in the first pregnancy. But with Amani's pregnancy, I experienced great anxiety throughout. I see this in hindsight. At the time, I just thought it was, being anxious about work and having another baby too soon or whatever. But, I would come to realize what it was. But I besides that, I enjoyed that pregnancy a bit more. I allowed myself to take care of myself a bit more because, everyone else was more busy and not as hands-on. But it was, for me, the pregnancy that helped me draw closer to myself a little bit. Remember who I was as a person and what I wanted. So it was also the time where I shared the pregnancy with my fans and, I made a thing out of it. I made a thing out of this process of carrying life, of being, blessed enough to be able to do that. You know what I mean? But I was so anxious. I used to just have this unsettled feeling in my heart that something wrong was going to happen. And I just didn't know what it was. And I didn't know how to articulate it. But it was this constant thing. And I think that's why I overcompensated as much as I did, in terms of enjoying it and sharing and being public and being open about it. Because there was just this undertone that wouldn't go away, that no man, something, it was a So that was the overall tone of that pregnancy.
So how did you manifest, or how did those anxieties manifest themselves in your pregnancy? Did you experience certain symptoms a bit more, or maybe did you respond in a certain way outside of sharing publicly and loving yourself a bit more?
So during that time as well, I was still undergoing the process of answering my spiritual calling. So there was a lot of chronic pain. There was a lot of chronic back pain. There was a lot of chronic pain around my ankles. There were very vivid dreams. I used to get visions, of unfortunately that energy of ending. You know what I mean? It was such a hectic time for me in terms of my internal equilibrium. I was completely off center, I was completely off center. And I did even feel like it was almost like observing. You come in and out of yourself in this moment. So for me, that pregnancy felt like the source of my initiation. It felt like the core of what it is that I had to initiate within myself in order to get to a point of complete alignment.
And did you realize that while it was happening, or is it a hindsight understanding?
Definitely hindsight. Definitely hindsight. Yeah. No, at the time, I felt everything all the time. I think that's the best way I can explain it, And I really didn't have the capacity to still myself and to realize, okay, what is going on? How do I protect my energy? How do I, protect my spirit in this time? Where am I supposed to go? I was just all over the place spiritually. I was really all over the place. And it was the time that I like to refer to it as being in the belly of the whale. It was just that time where a lot of things were happening to me, and I was learning how to control my choices in every situation and how to control where my journey goes. Well, not even control, but, be more conscious, I guess. Yeah.
So take us to the build up to delivery. I mean, your birth plan was again to do a home birth because those are part of your beliefs. And what was that like for you?
Okay, so the build up, I believe both my daughters came a week early. That's one thing. So I started labor, or there was contractions maybe on the Wednesday, or the Wednesday evening or the Tuesday evening, and then they stopped. And then I think that the day of her birth, I had that morning driven to my midwife to just go check. Am I dilated? Are we in labor? Why are the contractions stopping? What should I do? And she informed me, just walk around, your neighborhood and to get the contractions going. So I was doing that. I was playing some gospel music. I was just really trying not to be anxious about it, And at the time I used to do videos on Instagram quite a bit. These little skits that I would just throw out there. So I'm there on the bouncing ball doing videos, like, okay, listen here. You are going to be out. We're not going to do this. You're not going to give me torture like your sister. You're not going to do all of that. And then when the contractions started being consistent, my midwife made her way to the house. And this time around, I was able to do a home birth because I gave birth at home. And we have a bigger bath there. So I was able to do a water birth, which is what I really wanted to do with Ahadi, but I couldn't. So, it was just sort of that preparing for it. And I was I knew because I'd gone through the process before. So it's not as daunting, So it was 5 hours. Got into the water, 5 pushes, baby was out, So I was very relieved about that. And then when I pushed out the placenta, that's when drama happened, because in that moment, I felt myself get up out of the tub to leave. But when I looked behind, my body was still in the tub.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay. And then I remember in my mind hearing my great-grandmother's voice saying, Tisefo, which is my sister to me, and I remember standing and going, that makes sense. And then I sat back down again. So that happened, and I didn't know what that was.
So it was like an out-of-body experience.
Yeah, it was a near-death experience. It was a near-death experience. I remember also my midwife just exclaiming in shock that, why is there so much blood? And like I said, I'm not somebody who goes to the hospital. I'm not somebody who chose that. So I'm pretty sure had I been in a hospital, they could have explained a bit more, what caused that bleeding or what had happened in that moment. But at the time, it was just, okay, I'm back. My temperature dropped very low, so I had to get myself warm. But they checked baby and everything was fine. And the midwife left.
Did baby cry immediately after being born?
what actually happened is the moment she put her on my chest, she was still. I actually remember there was a moment where I was like, why is she still? I remember having that moment of shock. And then she, removed the mucus from the nose or whatever it is that they do with the babies when they come out. And then that's when she cried. So at the initial moment, she was not crying. But like I said, my midwife did check the baby. And in that first week on day 6, we did go to a pediatrician as well, because, you have to do those checks. And the pediatrician also gave her the all clear the day before. And then on day 7,
as in the first, so what you're explaining is there was a moment where baby didn't breathe immediately, but airways were cleared, and then baby did cry. And then afterwards, in the days after that, baby was checked and baby was fine, including by a pediatrician.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So, and this is now day 6 or 7?
Day 6.
Okay.
Literally the day before she passed away, we went to a pediatrician.
Okay.
I for one had some concerns because her hands and feet were very light, and the lips were just a little bit blue for me, but the pediatrician had said, no, this is normal, when children are born, their circulation is catching up, or whatever the case may be. Give it a comeback on 6 weeks. So you take their word for it, and you go home. And the next day, around 4 p.m., 6 p.m. around there, I'd come home from a meeting, and she was there with my mother. And I just noticed that she was a little bit cold, So I took her upstairs to the room, and I just, took off my clothes and to do some skin to skin and put on a heater and just try and warm her up a little bit, And then she began hyperventilating. And at first, it's like it was a dream space. It was a dream space. When you're a mom, if your baby's sick, you just go through your head all the things that you need to do. You know what I mean? You sort of, if your child has a fever, you go through the steps. And I'm somebody who likes to research everything, so I Google everything. I look everywhere for information in terms of how do I, show up the best way for my child. So she started hyperventilating, and then she became still. That's really the best way I can describe what was happening in that moment. She was hyperventilating. I did my best to calm her down, and then she became still.
When you say still,
still,
what do you say still? What do you mean by still?
She stopped moving.
Okay.
She stopped moving. And when I put my ear to her chest, her heartbeat had stopped. And the one thing about Amani is that she had a very strong heartbeat. We even thought she would be a boy. And when you have that moment where you listen to your child's chest and the heartbeat is still, it just incites panic. So I ran downstairs. I told her, Dad, look, she's not breathing. Let's go to the hospital. And when we were in the car, that's when mucus started coming out of her nose, And I guess a mother's instinct will tell you, but in that moment I felt like, okay, something terrible is happening here. And I think I'm losing my child. And when we got to the emergency room, they worked on her for 45 minutes. They gave her 4 adrenaline shots. They really did their best. I will say that. I felt like they really tried to save her. But it wasn't meant to be, And that was where I feel I died. I feel whoever I was before that moment completely died.
How did they tell you? Because obviously when you go into the emergency room, you're not allowed into the space where they're working on baby.
I was in that space. I literally went into that space where they were working on her. And I remember there was and I'm naked just except for my gown. I'm barefoot. I have nothing under my gown. I just have this gown on. And I was kneeling on the floor and I was pleading with my ancestors. I was pleading to God. And I saw them, perform CPR on her, and she's just lying there. And at some point, I just got up. I got up off the floor and I went into the waiting room and I just sat there waiting to hear them say what I already knew. And so, after a while, the doctor came and he said, I'm sorry. We did everything we could, And that was when her father and I just broke down. We just broke down. And then they brought her to us to be able to just, be with her for a little bit. And she looked like she was sleeping. I think that's also the thing. And her cheeks were rosy and she just looked like she was sleeping. It was, oh my goodness. I still think about it as one of the cruelest things I've experienced. But the pain, or rather the intensity of that pain, is why I am here today. It was a baptism of fire. I was at the core of the earth. But everything that it burnt away needed to be burnt away.
And I mean...
And that is what that is.
Obviously, that is a moment that no parent can describe. And that no parent, should ever have to go through. Your daughter at the time was 7 days old, if I've calculated correctly. 7 that's
days.
1 week old. And you find yourself in this moment. Where was your other child at the time? With Granny?
She was with Granny, but she was also there. I raised my children to respect their emotional intelligence. We are spiritual beings and having a human experience. This is my understanding of who we are. Heidi mourned her sister as well. She saw what happened.
How did you tell her?
My daughter was there. So she was there. She was privy. She saw what happened. She saw her sister's corpse at the hospital. She saw us rush to get to the hospital, and she came with Gogo, and Gogo was there with her, when they came to the hospital, because everybody had to now say goodbye to Amani. So she was there. It happened very quickly. This was all in a matter of a few hours, It happened extremely quickly. So she was present. She was there in the house. And she saw. She saw.
So, and you answered my next question, which was going to be, how did Gogo find out and that Gogo was actually with you there?
Yeah. And then her father's mother also was informed, and she also came to the hospital at the time. So the grandparents were informed when it was, officially stated by the doctor that she had passed on.
So were the doctors able to share with you at that time, considering this, it's actually too soon to say, what they suspected might have happened?
No, they weren't able to do that. And I refused to have an autopsy done on her because at the time it was just too painful a thought that they were going to cut open my baby, So I just elected not to do that. And I don't think it would have offered me any more peace. I really do not. It wouldn't have changed the outcome. So for me, I was like, yeah, I would know and then. So for me, I elected to just do tests for myself, to say, okay, let's test to make sure that the problem wasn't with me. If she had any kind of condition that she was born with or whatever, there's nothing I can do to undo that. It took her life. So I just, my first decision to walk towards peace was don't do the autopsy. It's okay. All I need to know is she's gone. I don't need to know what happened. But there were other ways for me to try and find closure, and I chose the spiritual route.
So what was it like those first few days being at home without your baby who, had just started to fill the home with new baby noises, and now baby's not there?
Excruciating. Excruciating. I have been through a series of different life hurdles and hardships. I've been through rape, I've been through abuse, I've been through absent father, I've been through all of these things, that we struggle with as human beings. But that is by far the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. It is by far the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. And it exposed to me every single unprocessed emotion I had leading up to that moment. It was just like facing all the ghosts in your closet at one time. And there's no way to hide. There's no way to hide. So her absence was extremely loud. It was extremely loud for all of us. For all of us. There's no other way of putting it. It was a hopeless space entirely. And it sat that way for years. It sat that way for years. Yeah.
Did you...
It was really, really hard.
Did you opt for a burial or a cremation? How did you choose to honor your daughter's life?
I did opt for a cremation, which, for most Black people is very controversial. But I felt she was mine. I felt like I had her inside of me for 9 months and 3 weeks. And she was mine. And I had every right to say goodbye to her in the way that spoke true to me. And I also didn't want the politics of fighting over where she should be buried. Black families, we can really be so petty about a lot of things. So I'm part of the generation that protects their peace, unapologetically so. And if that means I have to go against authority, then that's okay. It's a risk I'm willing to take, So I did not ask permission in terms of how I wanted to go about laying her to rest. I sat down with her father and we discussed what would be best for us. And we had a ceremony where it was myself and him. And we walked down the aisle of that crematorium and we sang and we just prayed and we released our daughter, And I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Next time on Unpacked.
So I felt sick. I was vomiting. The doctor came and told me that my baby had a meningitis. I was feeling as if I was a failure. I will have another one and he will live or she will live. Not going to give up, not now.
Thank you so much for watching Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. Make sure you subscribe to my channel where you can get to watch more episodes. But more importantly, you can be part of our online community. Comment down below, share with us who you'd like to see on the show, what story you'd like us to discuss. We love engaging with you. Keep it coming and don't forget to subscribe.